There's a reason some people walk into a room and instantly command respect. Not because they are loud, not because they talk non-stop, not because they have the perfect words. In fact, the most powerful person in the room is often the one saying the least. And if you've spent your entire life believing that confidence means talking more,
Explaining yourself more. Defending yourself more.
then what you're about to hear might completely change the way you see power. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is not insecurity. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a weapon. And the people who understand how to use it rarely lose. Think about the last time someone made you angry. Maybe they insulted you. Maybe they doubted you. Maybe they disrespected you in front of others. What did you do? Most people react instantly. They argue. They explain. They defend. They try to prove themselves. And without realizing it, they give away their power, because the moment someone can control your reaction, they control you. But powerful people understand something different. Something most people never learn. Not every battle deserves your voice, and not every opinion deserves your attention. Sometimes, the strongest response is no response. The strongest answer is silence. And that idea sounds simple until life tests you, because silence is easy when everything is peaceful. Silence becomes difficult when your ego is hurting, when your pride feels attacked, when you desperately want people to understand you, when you want justice, when you want validation, when you want the last word. That is when silence becomes power. Not because silence changes others, but because silence changes you. And today, I want to show you why quiet people often become the most powerful people in the world. Not because they speak less, but because they understand something that most people never do. A lesson that can transform your confidence, your relationships, your communication, and your entire life. Let's begin with a truth that nobody likes to hear. Most people talk too much because they are afraid. Not confident, afraid. Afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being ignored, afraid of being judged, afraid of not being enough. So, they keep talking. They explain every decision, defend every action, justify every choice. They desperately try to control how others see them. But here's the problem. The more you chase approval, the less powerful you appear. Imagine two people standing in front of a crowd. One person keeps talking, trying to convince everyone they are smart, trying to prove they matter, trying to earn respect. The second person says very little, calm, composed, comfortable. They don't rush, they don't force, they don't perform. Who seems stronger? Almost always, the second person. Because confidence is not loud. Confidence is relaxed. Confidence does not need constant evidence. Confidence does not beg for attention. Confidence trusts itself. And that trust creates a presence that words cannot fake. Have you ever noticed something strange? The people who constantly tell you how important they are usually aren't. And the people who truly have power rarely need to announce it. A lion doesn't walk through the jungle telling everyone he's a lion. He simply walks. Power announces itself through presence, not noise. And this is where most people make a huge mistake. They think silence is about staying quiet. It's not. Silence is about control. The ability to choose your response instead of being controlled by your emotions, that's real power. Because anyone can react, anyone can explode, anyone can lose control. But staying calm when your emotions are screaming, that requires strength. Imagine someone insults you. Your heart starts beating faster. Your mind starts creating arguments. You think of 10 different ways to destroy them with words. And then you stay silent. Not because you're weak, because you're stronger than your impulse. That moment changes everything. Because now you're no longer a prisoner of emotion. You're the master of it. And people can feel that. Even if they never say it, silence creates mystery, and mystery creates power. Think about social situations. Who gets remembered more? The person who talks nonstop for 2 hours, or the person who speaks less but says something meaningful when it matters? The loud person fills space. The quiet person creates impact. There's a difference. One creates noise. The other creates value. And deep down, everyone knows it. But there's another reason silence is powerful. A reason most people never consider. Silence forces people to reveal themselves. Imagine you're having an argument. The other person expects you to fight back. They expect resistance. They expect drama. Then suddenly, you become silent. Something interesting happens. The spotlight moves. Now they have to sit with their own words, their own emotions, their own behavior, and many times, people expose themselves when there is no resistance. Because conflict needs 2 participants. Remove one participant and the entire dynamic changes. This is why emotionally intelligent people often stay quiet. Not because they don't know what to say, because they know exactly what would happen if they said it. They understand timing. They understand emotional energy. They understand human nature. And that's a different level of intelligence. But let me tell you a story. A young man started his first office job. He wanted everyone to like him, every meeting, every conversation, every interaction. He tried to impress people. When someone challenged him, he defended himself. When someone criticized him, he explained himself. When someone doubted him, he argued. He was constantly talking, constantly proving, constantly exhausted. Then one day, an older colleague gave him advice that sounded almost ridiculous. He said, "Stop explaining yourself to people who already decided not to understand you." The young man laughed. But he remembered those words months later. A coworker publicly blamed him for a mistake he didn't make. His heart was racing. His face became hot. He wanted to fight back immediately. But then he remembered. Stop explaining yourself to people who already decided not to understand you. So he stayed calm, silent. The room became uncomfortable. Everyone waited. Everyone expected a reaction. It never came. A few days later, the truth came out. The accusation was false. The coworker lost credibility. And the young man's reputation actually grew stronger, not because he won an argument, because he showed emotional control. That moment taught him something powerful. You don't have to attend every fight you're invited to. Read that again. You don't have to attend every fight you're invited to. That single realization can save years of stress. Because life is full of people trying to pull you into emotional battles. Online, at work, in relationships, in families, everywhere. Some people want your attention more than they want truth. Some people want your reaction more than they want understanding. And every time you react automatically, you hand them exactly what they wanted. But silence breaks the cycle. Silence says, "I refuse to let you control my emotional state." And that's powerful, very powerful. Now here's where things become even more interesting. Because silence isn't only about dealing with others. Its greatest power appears when you're alone. Because the loudest voice in your life isn't your boss, isn't your family, isn't social media. It's your own mind. Most people are terrified of silence, not because silence is uncomfortable, because silence reveals things. It reveals fears, insecurities, regrets. Truths we've been avoiding for years, and that's why many people constantly seek distraction. Music, scrolling, videos, notifications, noise, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. But growth begins where distraction ends. The moment you sit quietly with your thoughts, you begin meeting the person you've been running from, and that meeting can change your life. Because deep inside every human being, there is a wiser voice, a calmer voice, a stronger voice. But most people never hear it. The world is too loud, and their mind is even louder, which is why some of the most successful people in history intentionally created silence. Not because they had nothing to do, because they understood something most people miss. Clarity grows in silence. Wisdom grows in silence. Self-awareness grows in silence. Power grows in silence. And the person who learns to be comfortable alone becomes incredibly difficult to manipulate because they no longer need constant validation. They no longer need constant approval. They no longer need noise to feel alive. They become grounded, stable, dangerously focused, and that's when life begins to change. But there's a darker side to this story, a hidden reason why most people never develop silent power. And once you see it, you'll never look at human behavior the same way again. The darker side is this: most people are addicted to being noticed, not respected, not admired, not valued, not understood, simply noticed. Think about it. How many decisions do people make just to get attention? How many arguments start because someone felt ignored? How many posts are made, not to share something meaningful, but to hear? Look at me, agree with me, validate me. And there's nothing wrong with wanting connection. We're human. We all want to be seen. But when attention becomes a need, you become weak, because now your emotional state depends on other people. Their opinions become your weather. Their approval becomes your oxygen. Their criticism becomes your prison. And that's exactly why silence feels so uncomfortable at first. Because silence removes the audience. Silence asks a terrifying question. Who are you when nobody is watching? Who are you when nobody is clapping? Who are you when nobody is praising you? Many people spend their entire lives avoiding that question, but powerful people face it. And that changes everything. Because once you stop living for attention, you start living with intention. You stop asking, how can I impress them? And start asking, how can I improve myself? That shift seems small, but it creates two completely different lives. One person spends years chasing approval. The other spends years building character. One becomes dependent. The other becomes powerful. And here's the irony. The people who stop chasing attention often receive the most respect, because people trust what feels genuine. They trust people who don't seem desperate. They trust people who don't need to prove themselves every minute. Have you ever met someone who was completely comfortable with silence? Someone who didn't rush to fill every awkward moment. Someone who could simply sit there, calm, present, relaxed. Most people find that magnetic. Why? Because it signals confidence. A person who can sit in silence without panic is usually at peace with themselves. And peace is rare, very rare. The modern world rewards noise, notifications, opinions, arguments, breaking news, endless content. Everyone is talking. Very few are listening. And that's exactly why listeners become powerful. Because listening gives you something talking never can: information. Imagine entering a room full of people. One person talks the entire time. Another person listens carefully. Who learns more? Who understands the room better? Who notices emotions? Who sees opportunities? Who identifies threats? The listener, always the listener, and that principle applies to every area of life: relationships, business, leadership, communication, success. The person who speaks first often reveals information. The person who listens first gathers it. That's why many great negotiators speak less. Many successful leaders ask more questions. Many emotionally intelligent people observe before reacting, because they understand something profound. Information is power, and silence helps you collect it. But silence does something else, something even more important. It protects your energy. Think about how many unnecessary conversations happen every day. Arguments that change nothing. Drama that solves nothing. Gossip that benefits nobody. Complaints repeated 100 times. People waste enormous amounts of emotional energy on things they cannot control. Then they wonder why they feel exhausted. Silence creates boundaries, not physical boundaries, mental boundaries. It teaches you to ask, does this deserve my energy? Does this deserve my attention? Does this deserve my response? And often the answer is no. One of the most mature moments in life happens when you realize that not every misunderstanding needs correction. That sentence alone can free you. Because some people will misunderstand you no matter what. Some people will judge you no matter what. Some people will dislike you no matter what. And if you spend your life trying to fix every opinion, you will never have time to build your own life. The strongest people understand this. They focus on their mission, their growth, their purpose, and they let the noise pass by. Imagine a ship crossing the ocean. Storms come, waves crash, wind screams, but the ship keeps moving. It doesn't stop every few minutes to argue with the weather. It stays focused on its destination. That's silent power. Not becoming distracted by every emotional storm. Not changing direction every time someone criticizes you. Not abandoning your purpose because someone doesn't understand it. And that lesson becomes even more important when we talk about confidence. Because most people misunderstand confidence completely. They think confidence means always having something to say, always being outgoing, always being dominant, always being the loudest voice. But real confidence often looks very different. Real confidence can be quiet, very quiet. A confident person doesn't panic when there's silence. A confident person doesn't need to win every argument. A confident person doesn't constantly seek reassurance. A confident person knows who they are. And that inner certainty creates calm. Imagine two trees during a storm. One tree is weak. It shakes violently with every gust of wind. The other tree has deep roots. The storm still hits it, but it remains steady. Silent confidence is like deep roots. It doesn't mean life won't challenge you. It means you won't be destroyed by every challenge. And the beautiful thing is, anybody can develop this. You don't need more talent. You don't need a better personality. You don't need perfect communication skills. You simply need practice. Practice pausing before reacting. Practice listening before speaking. Practice observing before judging. Practice thinking before responding. These tiny moments create enormous change over time. Because every pause strengthens your self-control. And self-control is one of the most attractive forms of power. Think about the people you admire. Truly admire. Maybe it's a leader, a mentor, a parent, a teacher, a successful entrepreneur, a respected public figure. What makes them impressive? It's rarely their volume. It's their stability, their calmness, their ability to remain composed when others panic, their ability to think clearly under pressure. And that ability often comes from mastering silence. But now, let's talk about something deeper, something many people secretly struggle with: rejection. Because silence becomes extremely difficult when you feel rejected. When someone ignores your message, when someone leaves your effort unappreciated, when someone chooses somebody else, when someone walks away, the natural reaction is to chase, to explain, to convince, to beg for understanding. But powerful people learn a painful truth. Not every door is meant to open, and not every person is meant to stay. Sometimes, silence becomes an act of self-respect. Instead of chasing, you release. Instead of forcing, you accept. Instead of begging, you move forward. And that kind of silence changes your identity, because it teaches you that your worth does not depend on someone choosing you. Your value exists before their approval. Your value exists before their validation. Your value exists before their recognition. And once you truly understand that, you become free. Free from people-pleasing, free from emotional dependence, free from constant insecurity, free from the exhausting need to prove yourself. Now, here's the fascinating part. The less you need validation, the more confident you become. And the more confident you become, the less validation you need. It's a powerful cycle, but the opposite is also true. The more validation you need, the weaker you feel. And the weaker you feel, the more validation you seek. That's why silence can be transformational. Because silence interrupts the cycle. It teaches you how to stand alone. And standing alone is one of the greatest strengths a human being can develop. Not isolation, not loneliness, inner independence. The ability to remain grounded even when nobody is cheering for you. The ability to continue your journey even when nobody notices. The ability to stay committed when progress is invisible, because that's where greatness is built, not in applause. In quiet consistency, not in public praise. In private discipline, not in recognition. In repetition. And most people never see that part. They see success. They don't see the silent years that created it. The early mornings, the lonely evenings, the sacrifices, the focus, the patience, the thousands of moments when someone chose discipline over distraction. Those moments rarely make noise, but they change lives. And if you're still watching this, there's a good chance you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Because maybe you've spent years feeling underestimated. Maybe people overlooked you, ignored you, misjudged you. Maybe you felt invisible. And maybe part of you believed that becoming louder was the solution. But what if your greatest strength was never your volume? What if your greatest strength was your depth? What if your power has been growing quietly this entire time, like roots beneath the ground? Invisible, but becoming stronger every day, because the strongest transformations are often silent. The caterpillar doesn't announce its transformation. The seed doesn't scream while becoming a tree. The sunrise doesn't make noise while lighting the entire sky. And your growth doesn't need an audience either, but there's still one final lesson. A lesson that separates truly powerful people from everyone else. And it has nothing to do with silence around you. It has everything to do with the silence within you. The final lesson is this: the most powerful silence is not the silence of your mouth. It's the silence of your mind. Because even when the world becomes quiet, most people are still trapped inside endless noise. Doubt, fear, comparison, regret, overthinking, self-criticism. The conversation never stops. And that inner noise quietly steals people's lives. It steals opportunities. It steals confidence. It steals peace. It steals courage. A person wants to start a business. The mind says, "What if you fail?" Someone wants to speak English confidently. The mind says, "What if they laugh at you?" Someone wants to ask for a promotion. The mind says, "You're not good enough." Someone wants to follow a dream. The mind says, "Maybe later." Years pass, nothing changes. Not because they lacked ability, because they listened to noise. And that's where the deepest form of silence begins. Not ignoring the world, learning to stop believing every thought. Because here's something nobody teaches you: just because your mind says something doesn't make it true. Your thoughts are not always facts. Sometimes they're old fears, old wounds, old stories, old insecurities, speaking through a microphone inside your head. And if you never question them, they become your reality. Imagine carrying a radio that constantly broadcasts negativity, day after day, year after year. Eventually, you'd believe every word. That's what many people are doing without realizing it. They're listening to a fearful narrator inside their own mind. And the tragedy is that narrator often sounds like truth. But powerful people learn to create distance. They observe their thoughts instead of obeying them. They notice fear without becoming fear. They notice doubt without becoming doubt. They notice anxiety without becoming anxiety. That small shift changes everything. Because now your mind becomes a tool, not a prison. And when your mind becomes quiet, something extraordinary happens. You start seeing life clearly. You stop reacting to every emotion. You stop chasing every distraction. You stop panicking over every setback. You become centered, grounded, focused. And people can feel it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. Have you ever met someone who seemed incredibly calm? Not fake calm, real calm. The kind of calm that makes everyone around them feel safer. The kind of calm that lowers tension in a room. The kind of calm that remains steady during chaos. Those people possess a rare kind of power. Because while everyone else is fighting external battles, they have already won the internal one. And that victory changes everything. Imagine two people facing the exact same challenge. One person is overwhelmed by fear. The other feels fear too, but remains calm. Same challenge. Different mind. Different outcome. That's why emotional mastery is such a superpower. And emotional mastery begins with silence. The ability to pause. The ability to breathe. The ability to create space between stimulus and response. Because in that space lives your freedom. Think about it. A rude comment appears online. Pause. A difficult conversation begins. Pause. An unexpected problem appears. Pause. A painful rejection happens. Pause. Most people react immediately. Powerful people create space. And inside that space, they choose, not based on emotion, based on wisdom. That is silent strength. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't need anyone's permission to develop it. You don't need more followers, more money, more status, more talent. You can begin today, right now, with the next challenge life sends your way, because life will test you. Someone will criticize you. Someone will doubt you. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will provoke you. Someone will underestimate you. And in that moment, you'll have a choice: react or respond. Explode or observe. Prove yourself or trust yourself. Seek validation or remember your worth. Follow noise or choose silence. That choice may seem small, but repeated over months and years, it completely transforms a human being. The loud version of you seeks attention. The silent version of you builds strength. The loud version of you chases approval. The silent version of you creates value. The loud version of you reacts. The silent version of you leads. And eventually, people begin noticing something different about you. Not because you're trying to impress them, because you've changed. Your presence changes, your energy changes, your confidence changes. Your decisions change. You become harder to manipulate, harder to intimidate, harder to distract. Because your power no longer comes from external things, it comes from within. And that's the kind of power nobody can take away. Not failure, not criticism, not rejection, not setbacks, not circumstances, because it was never dependent on them in the first place. There is a quote often attributed to ancient wisdom: "The quieter you become, the more you can hear. And the older you get, the more true it becomes." Because silence teaches lessons. Noise never can. Silence teaches patience. Silence teaches observation. Silence teaches emotional control. Silence teaches wisdom. Silence teaches self-respect. And perhaps most importantly, silence teaches you who you really are. Not the version created by expectations, not the version created by fear, not the version created by society. The real version, the strongest version. The version waiting underneath years of noise. Imagine yourself 10 years from now, standing in front of a mirror, looking back at your life. What will matter? The arguments you won, the opinions you changed, the people you impressed? Probably not. What will matter is who you became. Your character, your discipline, your peace, your courage, your integrity, your ability to remain true to yourself. And all of those things grow quietly, like roots beneath the surface, invisible at first, powerful later, because the truth is, the strongest people are not always the loudest. The strongest people are often the ones nobody notices at first, the ones working in silence. Growing in silence, healing in silence, building in silence, preparing in silence, until one day, the results speak so loudly that words become unnecessary. And maybe that's the message you needed today. You don't need to prove your value to everyone. You don't need to explain yourself to every critic. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to chase every opportunity for validation. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. You only need to become stronger than the voice that doubts you. Because when you master that, everything changes. Your confidence becomes real, your peace becomes stable, your focus becomes sharper, your purpose becomes clearer, and your presence becomes powerful. So the next time life challenges you, the next time someone tries to provoke you, the next time your ego demands a reaction, remember this: silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is not fear. Silence is power under control. Silence is confidence without performance. Silence is strength without aggression. Silence is wisdom choosing its moment. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing. No explanation, no argument, no defense, no performance, just calm certainty, just quiet confidence, just inner strength. Because lions don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. The ocean doesn't argue with the rain. The mountain doesn't defend itself against the wind, and you don't need to prove your worth to people who cannot see it. Keep growing, keep building, keep learning, keep becoming, and let your results speak. Let your character speak. Let your discipline speak. Let your actions speak. And when the time comes, the world will hear your success, even if your journey was silent. Because true power was never about making more noise. True power was always about mastering yourself. And that kind of power changes everything forever.